Alright, explanation time. Feel free to ask questions if I didn't cover whatever it is that you wanted. Ironically, I designed and created this before the whole ironic epidemic of wearing a face mask all the time. I just like the way it looked. It's really cool. Made of PVC for the face shield part. D-rings and elastic just to hold it around the face. Regular foam with fabric paint, so it's nice and pliable, but also relatively strong. Largely PVC though. Heated up, expanded, and carved with a Dremel. The paint is quite a variety of paints, not just fabric paint, but also a lot of acrylics, pearlescent accents, as well as maintaining exactly what the Tzitzy looks like. Now, moving on. That thing is really hard to wear, by the way. Moving on, the slinger, classic. Everyone talks about it, but mine is 100% functional. Forgot the ammo at home, but I can load it and fire it. So it's controlled by a small string mechanism on my fingers, hooked to a trigger mounted toward the rear, pulling it back, releasing the trigger, engaging it. Now it's stuck in place. A lot of fun for sure. And it's largely controllable. So the slinger, fabric scales, Joann Fabrics, more foam along with 3D printed claws mounted into it, so that way it has something to latch onto for the elasticity that powers the whole thing essentially. More foam, triggering mechanism, same as with a slingshot. The difference is here nothing is lethal or bad or whatever. Now onto the wings. There's retractable laces inside here, so it makes it retract in and out a little bit. It's not perfect in that way because it can't be. It can't go back and forth without a powering mechanism. An electrical mechanism. So, using just mechanical energy, 3D printing, sewing, and a heck of a lot of glue, it all ended up real nice. Now, that doesn't explain the rest of it, though. This is a far more complex thing than I'm letting on. Not only is it a functional slinger for cosplay purposes, it's cosplay safe, because all you have to do is put a small screw in there, or unscrew this one here, and it becomes completely useless. It can't fire, it can't do anything. So that way, as far as peace bonding, it's good to go for any convention. That's not where it stops, though. I put in a laser sight as well. You can see that on here. Yeah. There we go. There's the laser. It's kind of ironic like that. It fires a bunch of different things. It can fire the little arrow straight out the tip. Also, you can put a flash pod in here. I used Easter eggs with a little LED light inside. You'll see that later. And it works pretty well. But that's not why I like it the most. Why I like it the most is because no matter how you build these things, they tend to be kind of heavy if you're going to make them functional. So what I did to get around that was I made it detachable. For posing purposes and everything like that. This is a PVC mount to some vegetable tan leather that I tanned myself. Dyed, all that good stuff. Just put this aside. I used magnets and little pins at corresponding holes to lock it into place. This strap is what keeps it on my wrist, just like in the game, ironically. Now, that said, it can be a little annoying to get on and off, but I can do it by myself with no help from anybody, and that's a really big deal. Most of these elaborate costumes that I've seen, they require a lot of help, which there's nothing wrong with, but there we go. The magnets kind of suck it into place. Put the strap back on, all that good stuff. I'm going to leave it off for now for the rest of the Q&A and all that stuff. Alright, so we're past the slinger at this point. Oh, it's adjustable to almost any size. I didn't know if I was going to put on a ton of weight or not, so I was like, I want this forever. Yeah. Alright, next subject. Alright, we'll start small. The necklace. This is exactly accurate from the game. You'll see the content material, the reference material, that's it. This is a 3D printed claw, painted with acrylics. Same thing with these, same claw, only cut shorter. The beads are just resin. String came from Joann's. It's the same shade. You don't know what it is in the game. There's no real way to zoom in and find out for sure if it's leather or not. So that's good for the necklace. This collar. Every blue part you see on me, all of it, hand carved, dyed, tanned, and aged leather. Actual, like, vegetable tan leather from Tandy. You can get it in its raw, basic form, which is what I did. And I developed a pattern for a nice coat-like figure for the character. Like a, sort of like a Matrix trench coat, I suppose. And every scale you see on here is also hand carved. Each individual one had to be done by hand at a time. And I gotta tell you, these tails, they sucked the worst. Those tails sucked. It was really hard. I don't know how many hours. I genuinely don't know. It took me approximately 4 days just to carve it. That's not letting it dry or dyeing it or sealing it, any of that. So I also had to use a multitude of blues to get the correct blue from the game. Alright, so that explains the general color patterning in leather. Alright, now here's where it gets tricky with leather. Leather can be shaped and molded and all kinds of things. You get it wet, you put it in the position you want, and it takes its shape, and it's usually very rigid. However, this collar is basically an impossible shape with leather. It really is. So what I did to overcome that impossible shape to maintain rigidity and flexibility at the same time, I used PVC. Plumbing PVC. Heat it up, flatten it out, cut your pattern with a scroll saw, and then heat it up. Eating my own hair. Then flatten it out, use the scroll saw, cut out your pattern, and then reheat it accordingly and shape it around. That's the entire shoulder piece right here, as well as the collar. The collar is a separate piece riveted to the shoulder piece, and that's what gives it its nice steady shape, right? It just stays there, rivets and all, and I'm pretty happy I figured that out. The inside is actually just a scale fabric that I bonded to the leather and the PVC using a multitude of glues. So HH66, not my favorite. There's also what was it? Oh geez, I think it was Flex Seal that I used a lot of. But toward the edges, I had to use normal fabric paint, because that acts both as a glue and a concealer, because the PVC I used is white. I don't want that showing through, right? That's not right with the color. So generally speaking, that's what I did to get it to stick together for just continuity of the material, because obviously there's no Tzitzy raptors running around here, so you gotta do what you gotta do. Yeah, next. Alright, next. This character in this game never uses these. But they look cool, like throwing daggers, so I just used a little bit of PVC, carved it down, painted it accordingly, fatigued it with some rust looking stuff there, even wrapped the handle just like it is in the game. All 4 of them. Just how it is. The same thing is true with these daggers. In the game, he never takes these out. The game just doesn't even, as with so many things, acknowledge they even exist. But I made it all the way. Go big or go home. I didn't have to, but there it is. Retractable stuff like that is very cool. Actual sheathable stuff like that is very cool. I love it when I see that kind of stuff. When you didn't have to, but go all the way. Go big. Do the best you can do. Awesome stuff. Now, so those 2 are the unnecessary things I didn't have to do but did anyway. This shirt on the inside, the vest that you see, I sewed together myself from a pattern from a vest that I happen to like very much. And the back of it, though, you can't see it because I'm wearing it, but the back of it I made out of a very elastic material from Joann Fabrics. It's just, it's the same as my gloves, really. It's just a very springy. So that way it gives me breathing room, but it stays rigid just like in the game, like a very square, like it never really changes kind of a thing. And on top of that, show you one of the buttons. They're hard to do. Show you this one. This button right here, right? Just looks like a button, and it is in the game too, but it's dual purpose. I put buttons on both the shirt and the vest because it helps keep it at exactly the same position. So no matter what I do, with squat or anything like that, it stays exactly there. So photo shoots, awesome. Now that's very important to me because it's always that one thing you don't notice, and then you look through the videos and you're like, oh man, why didn't you tell me that my belt was undone? I couldn't see it. It's a big costume. All that stuff. So, very cool. Right, next subject. The shoulder piece. This was a little difficult because it's a little impossible in the game. The shape of it looks easy enough, but the mechanics of being on the shoulder and all that movement is actually impossible. You can see the shoulder plate going through itself all the time while the character is moving around. So the only thing I could do to make it both functional and accurate was to make it separate pieces. In this case, just two separate pieces with my shoulder being the joint and a nice big gap so it can move. It's not very visible from the side or the front or anything like that, which is good because it's better continuity that way in my opinion. But that was how I was able to do it. It's made of high density plumbing PVC, same as the elbow pads right there. Same material, painted a glossy black and then chromed out as much as I could, along with some nice rust fatiguing, rub and buff and such. Same thing here. Anything you see that's shiny on me, probably PVC. For two reasons. Two. One, it's really strong. I like that because stuff breaks all the time when you're walking around a convention. You fall, you drop things, whatever it is. With PVC, it's next to impossible to break, especially if it's 1/4 inch thick like this is. And two, it's really malleable. Like if you use a normal respirator in a ventilated area in your front yard or garage like I do, and you just use a heat gun, you can shape it to whatever you want. You just got to be patient. It takes a little more work. It's a little harder, right? So that I always recommend. Same thing here. This is actually a shaped PVC mounted to the leather gauntlet, all right? And it's really strong, really nice. I love it. It's just so convenient. The elbow pads were a little difficult to get to stay in place, but through the magic of elastic bands and shoulder connections, it worked out good. You know, they stay exactly where they're supposed to do, it's supposed to be, at least most of the time. So, there we go. You can't tell I'm really nervous. Alright, on to the belts and the scout fly cage. The scout fly cage I made using a lot of plumbing supplies. More PVC, right? Perfect. Go to the plumbing section, you can get little caps and such like that you'd use for other things that aren't as applicable, I should say. I used green fairy lights on the inside. They're easy to replace. They got a nice big cavity in there, all that good stuff. And I carved out the pieces like you normally would with cardboard or anything else, but again, this is that PVC cut using a scroll saw, a very cheap scroll saw, by the way, only 70 bucks. And because it's structurally sound, it's like a building. This thing is strong. Like I could probably stomp on this and it won't break. But it doesn't end there. I added a Bliss laser light, something I found myself a long time ago. I have another video that highlights it much better. Let's see here. This is the light shooting out the bottom of it, and when light is low, it actually lights up all the ground just like scout flies from the game. It's great. I love walking around and people have no idea where it's coming from and it's just all over the place. It's fun. People have a blast with it. Now, the belts are just that. Again, hand cut, sewn, and dyed all by myself. Sealed, everything like that. They're also adjustable to just about anything, and I also kept it accurate as far as what the game is for the way they tie this one, and this one connects over here, and these little pieces of PVC and such that seem to have no function whatsoever, but they're on the character, so I did it. Now, anything else I'm missing? Oh, this red line you're seeing on me right now. It's daylight, so it's almost impossible to see, but this is EL wire going throughout the perimeter of the coat. It glows red because in the game there's a buff called Unscathed, and your torso sort of glows red around the edges just a little bit, and the buff is generally, if I remember exactly, it's you have received no damage yet, and so you get a little bit of a boost in your attack and defense. I couldn't figure it out for the longest time. I was like, why is my character glowing? He didn't do anything. It's because you're in combat and you're not hurt yet. You get it back every time your health goes all the way up, I think. Now, the EL wire that you see going through the perimeter of the coat has a battery pack in the back. Inside this little pouch where I keep all of my other stuff, connecting with magnets. I can get in there pretty easily, all that good stuff. And if I really want to be lazy, I can ask for some help. Just don't steal my wallet, I guess. Batteries are obviously replaceable, all that good stuff. There's a few different settings, blinking, pulsating, all kinds of stuff for that. And then on to... what's next? What's that? Oh, I got it. Alright, now on to maybe the most difficult part of the costume. The legs. The legs are fully articulating armor, thigh, knee, everything. I can do almost anything with them, no problems. All that good stuff. There's no gaps, just like in days of old. You don't want the sword getting in there, so they are exactly accurate to the size and texture of the game. It's the brigade armor. Yeah, I committed a sin. I mixed 2 sets of armor, something no one else has ever done. Legs of brigade, Tzitzy, everything else. I like it. And I got the Dragon King eye patch over there, which was the easiest part, which is why I'm not going to show it to you. These are made of 1/4 inch thick plumbing PVC. Their base color is actually green, bright lime green type. Now, that said, I had to make sure that each piece was a separate piece, riveted together and using D-rings with elastic bands all the way around, attached to leggings with Velcro to hold it in place so that no matter what I do, a little tap dance and wherever else I'm eating my hair again, it'll stay right where it's supposed to go. It'll look nice and fluid. Now, also, brigade armor is just some blue leggings. Those are the easiest parts in my opinion. There's some 3D printed fleur-de-lis right there. Again, not necessary, but it's in the game. So I did that using some fabric paint and a little bit of a vegetable tan leather and sewing for rigidity. It was able to maintain generally the shape. The shoes are nothing special. Even in the game, they're just black. Nothing fancy at all. So try to eliminate the laces to make sure that it looks good as in the game and all that good stuff. Gloves, don't think I would have to explain that, but I will anyway. Very basic, same as the armor itself, as anyone else. Now, it doesn't end there. I decided to do an add-on because when you're on the back of a monster and you're stabbing, oh boy, and you're stabbing it to death, for some reason, there's one Monster Hunter carving knife when you carve it, but he has 2 when he's stabbing it to death. I did it on purpose. Rah, 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 rah. These were maybe the easiest ones, in my opinion. It's just more PVC. Button. Also, a snap for travel so it never comes undone, and a magnet to reattach immediately. The same is true for this one. Just more PVC. I like the chrome the most, in my opinion. Look at that. You can see the camera in that. I love it. I love it. Wrapped and carved. This is hard plastic. This is not foam. These are just plain beads and a wrap, all that good stuff. And if I can do this correctly, I can put it back. No help from anybody. I'm not saying it's easy. Here we go. Now it's secured for travel. Well, alright, now time to explain the bow. I'll start with that. Or you know what? No, I'll start with the dual daggers. These are the most basic of the weapons. The weapon set anyway. This is just the Volcana dual daggers from Iceborne. I consider them the most beautiful of all the dual blades. I'm not much of a dual blade wielder, but I appreciate art when I see it. This is largely made of hardwood, PVC, and oh, I guess that's it. Yeah, this is mostly hardwood, PVC, and a lot of nails. Well, some nails. The handle, I carved myself with a lathe, that little part. The guard is PVC again, cut out using a scroll saw. I've dinged these up so much at this point. I wish that wasn't the case, but here we are. The blade itself is, I used a router to get the overall consistent edge of it. And again, the scroll saw for the side panels. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different layers of material. Exactly accurate as per the printed pattern that I used. All that good stuff. There is a layer of pearlescent purple underneath. I got that by painting it first and then putting on the extra layer. All that good stuff. And in case you're wondering, yes, those holes go all the way through. Again, not easy when it's this thick. Now, these are easily strapped to my back while I'm walking around. So when I use them for walking around as I intend to, they just stay on my back. I never get to touch them for, I made this almost all the way functional. I can do a lot, but I can't do everything. You know, some of the game mechanics are just not, you can't do it. So, on to the next. Weapon. Which one should I do? I'll do the bow next. Alright. Alright. Now, I tinkered with the bow in the game. I do like it. It's not my favorite weapon, but it's it can be a lot of fun. Now, that said, this is the Lunastra bow. It's full size and 100% functional. I'll put a small video of the lights because they don't show up during the day at all, but it's a nice blue glow. I love it. I love it. It's the most beautiful one in my opinion. Now, that said, another impossible game mechanic, right, where it folds up on your back? Well, nope. Yeah, works great as far as functionality. It is a bit heavy, however, that's necessary. Now, explain what's going on here. This is a gym mat. This is a gym mat. It has a wooden core for strength. That said, these chains are also just plastic attached to a partial cog mounted inside of it. That cog does not function, but I managed to create a spring-loaded mechanism that allows it to flex, like in the game. Now, that said, the lights There's buttons just inside here. Push them and you can set it up for anything you want, flickering or solid, whatever it is, on both sides. I used a type of plastic that is both transparent and unbelievably strong for the inside so that you get that nice blue glow. Now, that also said, not only does it function as it does in the game. Done some other videos, you probably know what's coming. It's not very powerful, but gets the job done. Yeah. If you have any further questions on that, feel free to ask. The pivot point is here. That's the pivot point where the whole thing moves. Also, the string is completely detachable for, again, convention piece bonding rules and all that good stuff. It's relatively strong. I don't got to worry about it too much. You know, hold it up by the dang string if I wanted to. Alright. Okay, next. In my opinion, the pièce de résistance, the glaive. By far, the funnest weapon in my opinion. This was the most difficult project I had ever undertaken at the time. This part is a PVC wrap. It's a locking mechanism I invented. I like to call the Atlas joint. It locks into place and it will not move. It won't move. There's just no way. Not unless you pull the release mechanism. I'll go into more detail on that later. Now, that said, this backbone, all Bondo, hand-carved Bondo, there was just no other way to make it strong enough to seat the plexiglass in there with any other material I'm aware of. And so inevitably that makes it very heavy, but not unmanageable. This is high-density foam for the wings with a hanger inside of it for rigidity. The claws are 3D printed. This is supposed to be the mandibles, I suppose, of the Rathalos. All that good stuff. Seated in there with a nail and a heck of a lot of glue. This is 1/4 inch thick plexiglass. Lights up from the inside with a, I think, 1000 lume flashlight hooked to a switch, and the fabric paint is translucent enough to where it shines through it, making it look just like lava in the game. Now, that said, this is not unmanageable, even though it's very heavy. This is 2-inch thick hickory. Right, it's a 7-foot long staff. I cut down a little bit to create that joint up there. This cone shape right here is leather. I'll get to you later. This is actually a piece of vegetable tan leather. Yeah, I know, right? It looks pretty similar to the rest. It's not wood. It's not wood. That's actually leather. Let me show you it's pliable, kind of. It's very thick. So I dyed, tanned that myself, all that good stuff. This, the butt end, is insulation foam. Blue insulation foam from Lowe's. Layer by layer, glued together, carved down, and then a thin coat of Bondo all around it to sand it down and get that nice, like, dragony underbelly type texture. The spikes are made of gym mats. Sanded down with a belt sander, sealed, and painted accordingly. These scales, leather again. Hand carved, each one shaped while it was wet and nailed to it, along with a lot of glue, as though the glue is molten in between, you know, like those messy dragon scales and such. This is a 3D printed crystal on my G-Tech A30. Transparent material, and I only found one source in the UK with one last spool of that material I needed for this. So great, I love it. It lights up from the inside with an LED controlled by a remote. Oh man, I'm tired. Sorry guys. Controlled by a remote, and it cycles between different colors, and you can program it to do basically anything. So really happy about that, because in the game you get a bunch of different insects, and they do that. They have different colors depending on what they do. Green for healing, I think red for blast, purple for poison. So I get all the colors there. Freaking awesome, I love it. And don't forget the decoration. Did that myself too. Foil was ironed onto this. I carved it, cut it out myself for the exact pattern, hand drawn, everything like attached with a little clip. And these little buttons are there for travel purposes. This way makes it easier to travel around with it. You know, tight spaces and conventions and such. You gotta be able to think on the fly and all that good stuff. So, here we are with that. Reconnecting the buttons. And now, we get on to the one everyone seems to love the most. I want to introduce you to my Kinsect buddy. In my opinion, the most beautiful of all the Kinsects, the pseudo-moth. Again, 100% handcrafted, high-density EVA foam, along with the wings. Each are individual pieces attached to a simple body underneath. The face is made of some nice velvet-like material I found from Joann's. I forgot the name of it already, but this is also faux fur for the furry bits and all that good stuff. These are pieces of acrylic spheres for the eyes. They also they also light up a bit, just like in the game, all that good stuff. The legs I made of a polycarbonate type material found it at Lowe's. It's a I want to say it's in the gardening section for holding up plants. Funny thing, I used it for make a fake bug. The strap underneath is directly attached to the pseudo-moth to wrap around my arm so it can't come off. It literally cannot come off. That way no damage occurs. Now, that said, more EVA foam in front, pearlescence for the extra accent of the metallic nature of it. And the buttons, you can't see them, but they're underneath the fur right here. Click them on and off to show off those wonderful fairy lights. Can't do it here because you'll never see them in this light pollution. It's a beautiful day, but you'll never see them. So, that said, that about explains the moth. It's a little bit cumbersome, but I wouldn't have it any other way. Alright, so that about concludes the explanation of what I know to explain. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments or messages, however you feel. It's up to you. I hope this has been interesting. I hope somebody learned something that will help them. I mean, I hope, anyway. I can't give every detail because there's just too much. It's just, I would be talking for weeks. You know, it's just too much. But just remember, if you want something, go for it. Seriously, go for it. You can do it. I didn't know anything about this in the beginning, and I didn't know how to pursue it either, but I knew I loved it. I knew I loved building things. I knew I loved all this. Oh, the arrow! I never explained the arrow. Okay, this is super simple. Ostrich feathers from some farm somewhere. You know, they just drop on the ground, I guess. I don't know. For the fletching of the arrow in the game. Arrows are ridiculous. The ultimate attack is like a 6-foot long arrow, which I do have one, but I set a Christmas tree on fire with it, so it's not here. This is just another piece of wood cut out with a scroll saw and mounted with a little bit of Bondo to the dowel rod from Lowe's. This whole thing probably cost $3, $5 maybe from Lowe's when you add up all the most everything I've done is, because it's from raw materials, super cheap. So you don't have to see something huge and think, oh man, where do I even begin? It's so expensive. Start with a $5 arrow. Start small. Everyone starts somewhere. Start small. Just step by step. You'll do it. Keep going. One last thing. The gauntlet. This is, again, vegetable tan leather. It's about a 1/4 inch thick. It's comprised of 3 solid pieces bonded together with Velcro and rivets and a little bit of lace. Exactly accurate to the game. These are 3D printed claws that were pushed up, mounted with Bondo and everything else through the inside to give that 3-dimensional look, as though they were growing straight out of it. The scales were individually carved, one at a time, every single one of them, and shaped my arm to where I can still bend accordingly. All that good stuff. Very comfortable. These are just regular D-rings attached to the inside of the calf. This is the Velcro holding it together, the leggings. Well, it's not holding it together, it holds it in place. Everything else holds it up and in place. So, full articulation, all that good stuff. One last thing. The way I achieved the sparks that you see in the video, I mounted some flint into the body of the actual object, so it sharpens the same ways in the game, a little blunt piece of steel, and it makes that. The same is also true for the glaive. I mounted it into the back of the PVC cover. Really cool, especially when it's dark. Well, mostly when it's dark.